As a local Durham girl who grew up going to Duke women's basketball games, I am thrilled to be able to introduce today's speakers. First is Kara Lawson. She was an All-American at Tennessee under the legendary Pat Summitt. She's a WNBA All-American, All-Star champion, Olympic gold medalist, first female assistant coach for the Celtics, first female analyst for a nationally televised NBA game, and now we can add Duke women's basketball head coach to her long list of accolades. Jasmine Thomas is a class of 2011 graduate. She's a WNBA standout with the Connecticut Suns. She's just wrapped up the season with the Suns and has now traveled across the globe to play in Turkey. It's about 2:30 a.m. in the morning for her, so we'd like to thank you for joining us in these wee morning hours. And then moderating our conversation today will be Mychal Harrison. He's a class of 2001 graduate and current president of the Duke Alumni Association. He's a tireless advocate for creating educational opportunities, mentoring student athletes, guest lecturing, and endowing a scholarship for underrepresented minority students. And when he's not doing all of those things, he's a managing director for Huron Consulting Group. Now, one final thing, I would like to say thank you to the Duke Triangle alumni, to the Duke Triangle Women's Forum, and to Duke Athletics for sponsoring this event. And without further ado, Mychal, I'll let you take over and get the conversation started.
Great, thank you, Kaylene. And let me start by saying welcome to tonight's event. For those that don't know me, I am Mychal Harrison, president of our Alumni Association, and what a special treat this is. I do want to give a special shout out to Jasmine since it is 2:30, and we'll figure out if she was just coming in or about to head out for the night in a few moments. So, with that being said, why don't we get started? There was some overlap between Kara and Jasmine's time in the league, and I'm curious, Kara, what was it like, or do you recall playing against Jasmine?
I do recall playing against her, yes, because I followed Jasmine for some time. We're from the same area. We grew up playing on the same courts. I'm quite a bit older than Jasmine, so we never really shared a court in high school or AAU or college, but I guess I was lucky enough to hang around long enough in the WNBA that I got a chance to play her play against her in the earlier part of her career. And, that was exciting to me. I always took a special interest in players that come from the DMV. It's a rich basketball talent area, and certainly have admired Jasmine's path and what she's been able to do. So playing the same position, we definitely matched up numerous times. I can't really remember like a specific game or a specific instance, but we matched up for I guess about 5 years. My last 5 years in the WNBA, and again playing the same position. You're around each other and going against each other on every play.
Great. And Jasmine, as you think about having watched Kara both in college and the WNBA, is there something about her game that you admired?
I mean, just her leadership. I feel like obviously she was super talented. She said she followed me. I followed her. I can even remember a few times back when I don't know how old I was, but I remember coming in the gyms and actually seeing her and her dad on the court a few times, just like being around for games. So by the time that I got to the league to be able to be on the same floor as her, she doesn't know it, but I was kind of starstruck a little bit at the fact that I had actually made it. Like this is someone's footsteps I had followed for a long time and really looked up to. So to be on the same court with her, it felt good for me, but it wasn't easy. My first few years in the league were tough. So, a little bit of that veteran showing the rookie what's up.
And it's interesting point there. You talk about, making it to the league and following and Kara's footsteps and players like Kara's footsteps. When did you realize that you had the potential and had the desire to play basketball, say at the Division I college level and ultimately in the WNBA?
I feel like when you're younger, you kind of know sooner because you start getting those letters or getting invited to certain camps and just getting recognition from some of the top elite schools. So I'd say, probably around middle school, I knew that I was probably going to play a Division I athletics. And then, as I progressed in high school and started, ranked around among the top 20 in the country, and then getting down closer and closer junior, senior year, really, developing and committing finally to Duke, like that sealed it. I knew it was a hard decision to make because there was a few schools that were all, pretty dominant at the time. Of course, you had UConn, you had Maryland at that time, and being from Maryland, it was, a hard decision to make, but I'd always wanted to go to Duke. So that's how that, panned out. And then as far as playing as a pro, probably my junior year at Duke. That was my best year at Duke. And it was the time where I really saw myself actually wanting to have a career in basketball.
And Kara, what about for you? Was there ever that moment where you felt like, you know what, I can play and have meaningful contribution on the Division I level and potentially be a WNBA star?
Yeah, similar to Jasmine's story. Once you start getting recruited by schools at an early age, that kind of gives you something to shoot for, and you can set it as a goal and start to try and work towards getting there. So I would say probably 5th grade was when I started to really think about trying to get a scholarship at a D1 school for college, and was playing AAU and obviously playing locally in our area. For me, the WNBA was a little different because it wasn't around when I was a kid. It wasn't something that you could shoot for. It didn't come around until I was in high school. So I wasn't somebody that grew up with a WNBA intact or being able to watch those players on television. It was something that came along later. Once that came in high school, then that became a goal of mine. Towards the end of my high school career, the WNBA started, and then wanted to, at that point, knew I was going to be playing at a top school in college. And so then the next goal became to try and become a pro.
And speaking of sort of your college experience and more so picking the schools at which you ultimately attended, Kara, I mean, I can remember my senior year, you coming for your official visit to Duke, and both being from the DMV area. What were the deciding factors that helped you end up where you ultimately did? Kara, you being Tennessee, and Jasmine, you being at Duke. Jasmine, do you want to start?
For me, I would say my official visit probably sealed it. I would say my top schools were Duke, UVA, Maryland, and UConn. And I guess I made the mistake of going on my official visit first to Duke, and it kind of nixed all the other ones out. I'd always been in love with education. I knew I wanted to go to a good school and get a good education. So that was important for me and my family. And Duke was always high on that list because of that. And then also just the culture of basketball and winning. I remember watching that championship game against Maryland and, feeling like I lost because my team lost. I wanted to go to Duke that bad. So, that's how that decision came about.
I mean, my answer is pretty simple. I went to Tennessee to play for Pat Summitt. That's why I went. And I knew I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to be a coach since I was a little kid. And I wanted to play as long as I could. And I knew that I'd be coaching basketball somewhere. Didn't know what level, didn't know who, but that was my goal. That's what I wanted to do since I was younger. And so I felt like getting a chance to play for Pat as a point guard, there's not a better internship offered in the country for coaching than that for 4 years. And so that's why I went there, was to get coached by her. And, it was everything I thought it would be and more, that's for sure.
So interesting. You speak of wanting to have been a coach from a little kid, and you had the opportunity to learn from one of the best in the game, if not the best. How will that influence your coaching style and how you prepare our teams to take the court this coming winter and for years to come?
Yeah, my experience with Pat, I mean, I think it influences me every day. I think about her every day. A picture of her in my office, a picture of us in my office, I should say. And I think about her a lot. Definitely utilize things that she taught me, things that she showed me, how she lived her life as a coach, what she demanded, the standards that she had. All of those things are in me. They're ingrained in me from having played for her. So they're a part of me, and then as a result, they're part of our program and what we do every day. I'm a different personality than Pat, so it's not a carbon copy. She's one of a kind. She's an original, that's for sure. And so that there are differences there, but there's probably more similarities than differences. Definitely competitive, definitely disciplined, and definitely somebody that wants to push and challenge our players to reach their potential.
I do want to highlight a point that Jasmine made a few minutes ago, and she said she took her first official visit to Duke, and that sealed the deal. So just want to throw that out there. Let's get them on campus first.
There you go. When we can, right? We can't get any.
Definitely. No, that's great insight and sharing to us a little bit what about Coach Summit, what she meant to you and what you were able to take away from that and how that is developing your philosophy as a coach and helping build our program. Jasmine, thinking about some of the coaches that you've played with, obviously you've been playing a game for a while. Is there something that sticks out to you that's really, when things you're not making shots or the game isn't going the way that you want to, that you maybe call upon to be a source of inspiration and motivation?
From a coaching standpoint, like what?
Maybe words from a coach or just from someone that's been in your basketball past.
I mean, I feel like from a coach in general, just having played for many coaches, a big thing in my career is I'm actually someone who probably at every level, once get into an organization, I had a coaching change. So that includes Duke. That includes my rookie season going into the Mystics, coaching change, going to Atlanta, coaching change, and then going to Connecticut, coaching change. So I feel like for me, the biggest thing, that players go through, and that's the biggest challenge, is probably confidence. And I feel like when you have a coach that can really, like Kara said, for the most part, is challenge you and see your potential and get that out of you. I think that's when you feel the most valuable, is even when you're not playing well or when things aren't going well or you're trying to adjust to the level to, whether that's going from high school to college to pros, and you're going through so many different changes and still trying to find your identity each season. It's kind of like you need that coach that knows what that identity is. They know what they want to get out of you and how to do it. And that's communicating, that's, actually getting on the court and working with you one-on-one. And a big thing for me was actually watching film. So those are things that I really appreciate from a coach.
Great. And I want to transition to sort of the moment that we are in and dealing with sort of COVID, and get it from, Kara, obviously from your perspective. And even I think you were one of the few people that have had the opportunity to sit in the WNBA bubble, and then now coming to Duke and looking at what Duke is doing to manage COVID. And then Jasmine, I think before we started the program, you mentioned spending 3 months in the WNBA bubble and what that was like. Kara, can you just talk to us? I know you were only there for a short period of time, but like, what's that feeling? What's that moment like? You sort of enter the bubble thinking about how do we play this game and in the context of a global pandemic?
Well, I mean, there were a lot of things swirling around, our country at that time, not just the pandemic. And, with our guys, when we got back to Boston, just trying to make sure that we could ramp them up appropriately, because they had been off for such a long period of time. And then as we transitioned down to Orlando, and I mean, it felt like an AAU tournament was what it felt like, the world's greatest AAU tournament, but there's no family there. It's all the teams in the hotel. We're seeing each other. We're eating next door to the competition, and we're hanging out together and passing each other in the hallways. And, it was just unique. It was something that nobody had ever experienced before. But out on the court, it was fun, and out on the court, getting out to practice with the players and just being together again. We hadn't even seen them for a long period of time. That was feeling some sense of normalcy. But as you mentioned, I wasn't there very long, and probably had one of the shorter stays in the bubble. And then, quickly came up to Duke, and now we're in a similar situation. It's not the same because we move around Durham freely, but we also are very mindful of who we're interacting with and making sure that we're keeping our own bubble here at Duke with all of our players' health and our staff's health and safety at the top of the list.
Great. And Jasmine, what's the experience been like as a player? So 3 months in the WNBA bubble, or the wubble as some of the athletes called it. What was that experience like?
I mean, honestly, there were some concerns going into it, just because specifically with staff, they were able to kind of come and go as they pleased. They were going home every day, and we were kind of like questioning, well, is that, actually a bubble? But once we got settled, we realized just how safe we were. We could start to relax, get a little comfortable, obviously still following protocol, wearing our masks, keeping our hands clean, keeping our distance when we could. But, it was not easy as far as just mentally and emotionally with everything that was going on, everyone wanting to be in their communities when it comes to social justice and really being more involved and feeling like you can have more of an impact outside of the bubble. But I really think that we, the best part of the season was that we really proved that we could have a huge impact united together inside of that bubble. What we were able to do as a league, coming together and really taking a stand with our season and each game making a statement, I think that's what we ended up most proud of. And as far as the safety with COVID, now being outside of the bubble, having my season here in Turkey and already having positive COVID tests throughout the league, you kind of appreciate that bubble. You realize that that's really only the true safe way to effectively have a season.
And you just referenced, there being some positive cases in your program in Turkey. Can you talk about some of the noticeable differences, say, between, protocols or sort of testing measures that you're experiencing in Turkey relative to the bubble?
Yeah, I'll probably say maybe resources. We were getting tested every day for the entirety of the season. It was something in the WNBA where it's supposed to only be the first 2 weeks. Ended up going on until the very last day, tested every day. Here, you only get tested 2 days before the game. Sometimes there's 1 game a week, sometimes there's 2 games a week. So the way it actually happened in our program is that we had a staff member pass the test for a game and then a couple days later test positive. And not because he was tested, he just had a fever and they made him go to the hospital and get checked. So there's a little more room for you to, show up positive and it not be detected, and you could be around, several people before knowing. And I think that's what's scary.
Yeah, and Kara, one of the things that we have read so much about is how well Duke as a university is doing when it comes to overall cases. Can you share any insights into how you and the team and athletics are approaching health, safety, and just being smart, because we are dealing with college kids that want to enjoy as much of the college experience as possible, but at the same time allow themselves to be able to compete and participate this winter?
I've been really impressed with our athletes. It's hard for all of us to deal with this. I can't imagine doing so during the time that I was in college, when you're used to being able to do what you want to do and to be able to see your friends and, congregate in large groups. That's what college is. You're just with a lot of people all the time. So it's been hard for our players, but it's something that they've done an excellent job with, and just all of the things that Jasmine spoke of, making sure that they're being disciplined, wearing their mask, making sure that they're washing their hands, all of the things that are those health and safety really necessities if you want to give yourself the best chance to not contract the virus. And it's something that the way Duke has set it up, we're getting tested every day now that we're in season as a team. And so even on the off days, everyone's got to come in and get tested, and hopefully by doing that, and also by being careful, in our daily lives, we're able to be able to keep everyone safe and healthy.
That's great insight. And I do think what the Duke community is doing is impressive. If you read the headlines about what's happening across the country and then what happens at other campuses, what the collective community has been able to do has been impressive. So thank you. And we, hope that we can continue to keep up the good work that's happening across campus. Want to transition a little bit, and I know both of you touched on a little bit. Not only were we dealing with the pandemic, right? We have this era of the social climate that is probably one of the most challenging, I think, that we have seen play out sort of in front of our eyes, right? It's not new in a lot of levels, but what's happening now is the world is getting to see it. The WNBA has been a leader, I feel like, in professional sports for a long time when it comes to social justice issues and speaking out against, injustices and things that, they view as wrong. Jasmine, and also you, Kara, because I think you had similar experiences in the league too. Why do you think the WNBA was so far ahead of maybe some of the other professional sports leagues and even corporate America in that respect?
I just think, like you said, it's part of our culture. It's what we embrace. We have, phenomenal women in the WNBA, and that's a credit to, individuals. That's a credit to those who we have activists in the WNBA who lead the way, and a lot of us kind of, piggyback off of them to kind of have that guidance and know how to maneuver in these situations. And I feel like the best thing our Players Association did this summer was have that social justice council, so that, you were able to get involved with things that you didn't know you had access to, or, you wouldn't know where to start on how to use your voice or use your platform more effectively. And I think, we're a league of Black women. So, we are part of that group of, marginalized in this country. So I think that's where we really embrace that. And, like I said, everything is unified. I think that's the best thing is, no one's left out to deal with these issues on their own. And we know that when we have the chance to play on TV, which is something we're fighting for all the time, is, more visibility, more exposure, that we take those opportunities and we make the most of them. And that's what we're super proud of.
Kara?
Well, my short answer is because women are smarter than men. I mean, that's right. I mean, come on. The WNBA is an amazing place, and it's full of some of the most incredible, not just women, people in our world, not just our country. It's a global game, and it's a global league. And I think when you've been in the WNBA, you're used to being told a lot of things about yourself by other people. And you're used to being told, that your opinion and your game and what you do doesn't matter. Okay. And so we're told that a lot. And so we just don't really listen very well to that, and feel like that there are ways that we can affect change, not only because it's the right thing to do, not only because it's needed, but because it affects us as well. It has affected us as well. And that those experiences, I think, make us more relatable. I think make our stories more powerful, and can make our impact more powerful, because we're a part of what's happening in this country every single day. And I think being able to be the visual representation of a larger community, a community that has experienced struggle for such a long period of time, and to be a visual representation of that in powerful places, it's important. We know it's important, and it's something that we take great responsibility in, being able to represent the African American community and be successful and be determined and be powerful, be seen as powerful women. I think that really resonates with not just the African American community, but the entire world and the entire country, seeing strong, powerful, beautiful women impacting the world and impacting the game of basketball is something that is not just great to see. It's something I think that's a necessary part of the movement and a necessary part for the next generation to be able to witness.
And I want to stay on this topic and approach it from slightly different angles. With Jasmine, with you being overseas now, and I know it's been a short time since you've gotten there, but has this conversation come up with your teammates in Turkey or maybe some of the other individuals that you played against?
It actually did come up yesterday. I have only been here for a short time, so I'm most comfortable with my other American teammates. So all of us having come from the bubble to here, knowing what we want to continue to do during this time, we have talked about maybe we need to try to have a conversation with our team. If you pay attention to the men's side over here, the men's EuroLeague, they are doing things with their jerseys and they have commercials running on TV and they're doing, other things to kind of raise awareness about racism, because it does happen all over the world. Everywhere you go, the darker your skin, the more you're disrespected. So it's something that they're familiar with here, but we have to see how that goes with sponsorships, with certain things. It's the same thing you run into in the States, but it's just a different kind of, it's a different feel here because you're not part of an organization consistently. Every year the team's changing, you meet new people. These are new relationships every year. So it's definitely a conversation, and we hope that there's something we're able to do.
Great. And Kara, on the same topic, how do you talk to your team, that consists of anywhere from freshmen to seniors and, who some are about to go out into the world and, 8 to 12 months and experience some of this, experience more of this injustice. And then some are just kind of right out of their parents' home where maybe they don't have sort of that easy shoulder to lean on. How do you talk to your team and keep them strong in a climate like this?
Well, I think the first thing, Mychal, is you got to talk to your team, and I think that is something that is not happening regularly around the country in an authentic and meaningful way. And, people are scared to have the conversation. And some of that is derived from the fact that they might not be comfortable speaking about it. They might not be comfortable if they're not African American speaking about it. And so the first thing we do is we make sure we have conversations, whether that's in a group, whether that's one-on-one. I try to meet with the players one-on-one as much as I can because some players will be more comfortable to talk about certain topics one-on-one than they will be in the group. And so being mindful of when you're talking about something that could be sensitive with somebody that they might be more comfortable to talk about that in a smaller setting. So just making sure that myself and our staff are accessible as much as we can be to be able to have those types of conversations. The other thing we did as a group was we watched Henry Louis Gates's PBS documentary on Reconstruction. We did that for 4 weeks. We had a team movie night. We ate dinner together and then had some conversations, and we watched, it was about 50 to 55 minute each episode, the documentary. And, that was great on many levels. We have a number of international players in our roster. So Jasmine was talking about just how it exists everywhere, but just the American experience of racism and the manifestation of racism in America is foreign to our players from other countries. And so educating them on what this is about, what the social justice is about. We have players from other countries that weren't really sure or weren't taught in their countries about the history of America. And so that was informative and instructional for our foreign players. And it was still informative and instructional for our American players as well, to be able to watch and talk about it. So I think that the key is to just have a comfort level as a leader in being able to talk about difficult topics. And then I think the relatability for me is easy. Being a minority woman, I have a team that is majority minority women, and so the relatability there, having gone through what they will go through in the next phase of their life already, that allows me to speak, from a place having that experiential wisdom to be able to help them as they kind of navigate through their college careers.
And Jasmine, to that, to Kara's point, and when she started her comment about you have to talk to your team, how often did you and the Connecticut Sun, you guys have this conversation as a team? Obviously, there was a lot done outwardly in terms of, T-shirts and campaigns and slogans, but how often did you, as a team, sit around and talk about the issue of social injustice and inequality?
It was probably a weekly conversation, which actually started before we even got to the bubble. We were able to, as a team, put together that Change Can't Wait campaign that we have with the Connecticut Sun, which is really player driven. It was a conversation back and forth between us and our front office people just about what we wanted to do, what was important to us. And we put an emphasis, obviously, on encouraging people to vote, but we wanted it to be sustainable through the off season. So like you said, am I going to be able to do something specifically with my team in Turkey? I'm not sure, but I do know that I will still be able to impact our community, whether it's in Connecticut or, at home where I'm from, while I'm over here. And that's through the resources that they provided us with the Sun. So, that's something that we really worked hard on this summer.
And I'm going to stay, to pivot a little bit away from this, but I still think it ties in this notion of leadership, because it's come up a couple of times. One of the questions that's come in is talked about, admiring Kara's leadership style, and, how can a parent that's sending their kid off, whether to play a sport or to go off to college and to develop as an individual, how do we develop our next set of leaders? Obviously, you guys have been leaders in basketball, whether it's on the court, off the court, and in other areas of your life. How do we best develop leaders in this new era and this new generation?
I think the first thing for me is you have to develop relationships with players, and they have to understand how important communication is, and being able to have meaningful communication is what can develop or help develop a meaningful relationship, because leadership is about being able to inspire people. And the way that you can do that best is if you have a trust, if you have a foundation of a relationship with that person. And so I think more than anything, for me and for our staff, is we spend a lot of time with our players as much as we can, not just on the court, but talking to them, interacting with them, when they come up to the office. I mean, all of those things are really important. And being a new staff, we don't have the history of having recruited them or, met their families and all of those things. So that time that we get with them is really, really important. And as we continue to grow and learn more about them, then that allows you to see what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, where can they grow, where do they need to grow, and then be able to kind of push them and challenge them in those areas. But you can't do that without a relationship. You can't know where someone needs to grow. You can't know where someone needs to be pushed unless you know them. And so this can't be just, I'm going to do this for this person and this for this person and this for that person, because everybody's different and everybody struggles with different things. And, that's where Coach Summit really helped me when I was a player in college, in developing me into a leader by really pushing me in areas where I was weak, so that when I left college, I'm not going to say I was fully equipped, but I was much better equipped to be a leader when I left University of Tennessee than I was when I started, and most of that credit goes to Coach Summit.
And Jasmine, can you talk about how you've developed your leadership style and what's gone into that over the years since you came to Duke and now where you are in your playing career?
I mean, I know Kara was talking about it from a coaching standpoint, but even just listening to her, a lot of that I feel is the same when it comes to being a player, especially about relationships, and maybe it's being a point guard. I don't know if that's something that that position naturally brings with it. Not necessarily leadership. I can't say that every point guard is a great leader, but I know for myself, just developing those relationships and being able to inspire and motivate my teammates has been something that, I've worked on throughout my career. And it's been a huge part of my success as a leader in my professional career, for sure. And I think, it's hard sometimes as a competitive athlete when you're so focused on yourself and what you need to do to be better and show up and perform at the highest level all the time. But I think that's the challenge as a leader, is how can how can your work ethic and you focusing on success also influence those around you to want to do the same. And in my career, I feel like early on, I led by example all the time. I just tried to outwork in the vocal part of that, and being more comfortable in uncomfortable situations when it came to being on teams with people with more experience than me, or people with, better accolades than me, better players than me, trying to, figure out how can I still lead that team. And that was my challenge. And I feel like it was a rocky road at times, but I think that's part of what made me the player I am now.
I'm a bit hard pressed to find a better athlete than you, so that's not. But you mentioned something about hard work and outworking, and one of the questions that's come in from one of the audience members, and this individual is a commander in the special ops community, and really referring to Kara's leadership style. But I think it's a question that both of you can speak to. What is more important, people or mission, and competing or working hard? I'll start with Kara.
What do I think is more important, working hard?
Yeah, people or mission, and then competing or working hard.
Well, everybody knows I think competing is more important than working hard. So I think that, working hard is something that should be a given for everybody. Whatever job you do, it should be something that you do. But people that compete are special. And, I think there's just an assumption that everybody competes, because it's like a competition means that everybody's competing, and that's not true. Not everybody competes. And that goes up to the highest levels. I was with the Celtics last year, and in the NBA, and you're playing games every night, and not everybody in the NBA is a competitor. Not everybody is. They're good at basketball. That's why they're in the NBA. But it doesn't mean that they compete every day. It doesn't mean they compete every night. It just means they're good at basketball. So even at the highest levels, there is a premium on competitors. There is something special and unique about them. And I think that's true in every sector of business. If everybody's honest with themselves, wherever you work, there are people that are competitors and there are people that aren't. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad person if you're not a competitor. It doesn't mean that. It just means you're not a competitor. So every team I played on, every single person was not a competitor. And that's just the way it is. And as a leader, you try to figure out how you can get the best out of people, regardless of whether they're a competitor or not. But the ability to do that, man, that's something special. And it's something I'm attracted to. If I see it, and it wouldn't even be my sport. If I see it, it can be whatever it is. You can see it. If you are one, you can see it. You can notice it, and you notice it really easily. And I love being around competitors. It's one of my favorite things. One of my favorite things to do is to talk and interact with other people that love competing.
What about you, Jasmine?
I feel like I have to agree. I feel like just personally, my competitiveness, I think, is what drives me in everything. It could be like, who's the first person to the car? You know, I feel like I find a way to make every single part of my life a competition. And I feel like maybe cheating the question a little bit, that's ultimately what makes me work hard, you know, is I know that that's what's necessary for me to be able to even put myself in a position to compete the way I want to. So I just have to agree. I think she hit it on the head.
So speaking of competitors and competition, I'll start with Jasmine. Who's the toughest competitor you've faced so far on the court?
Honestly, it's not even somebody I play against. My teammate, Alyssa Thomas, is probably one of the like toughest, just extremely competitive people I've been around.
Kara?
Mine probably be Tamika Catchings. Played with her in college and then played against her for many years in the WNBA. And if you've ever been around Catch or played against her, she's special. She's special.
And on this attribute, this characteristic of being a competitor, is it something that you think is just innate, or you think it's something that someone can develop over time? What are your thoughts on that? Start with Kara.
So I think this. I don't know if you can develop it over time. I really don't. I'm not going to say yes or like I don't know. Like some people like you're born with it or you're not born. I'm not sure. All I know is this, like only you can choose if you're going to compete or not. Like I don't believe that I can make you to decide to compete. A lot of coaches, myself included, will create drills and you try to create an environment where it's competitive, right? And so whether it's we're keeping score or Jasmine and I are playing against one another, and if Jasmine gets 3 stops, then she wins, and if Kara gets 3 stops, then she wins. And so you create these drills and you create this environment where coaches think that they are creating competition. But ultimately, if I don't decide to compete, even if the drill is made for me to compete, or Jasmine doesn't decide to compete that day, it's a drill that's made to compete, but I'm not competing. Like I have to decide that. Like ultimately, we each have to make an individual decision each day or each drill or each possession or whatever it is to compete. So can it be developed? I don't know. That's maybe a sports psychologist question, but I can't give it to anybody and I can't make anybody do it. It's an individual decision that each player in my realm, in my environment, that each player has to make. And they either make it or they don't when they walk in the gym. And there's very little that I think a coach can do if someone's decided to not compete that day. Because they got to decide. They're the one that has to make the change. It's not something that, you know, I can snap my fingers or flip a switch or send them running, and then all of a sudden they're going to be like, oh, now I'm ready to compete. So, you know, that's kind of the way I look at it is it's an individual decision that you have to make before every play, before every practice, before every game, whatever it is. And you're either going to do it or you're not. And I think it's such an important quality in a player. I mean, it's a really important quality in a player because a lot of the other stuff takes care of itself is if you find someone that competes, you know, kind of like what Jasmine was talking about. If you compete, you're going to work hard. If you compete, you're going to be in shape. If you compete, you're going to be focused on winning because that's what competition is. You're worried about winning. That's what makes you a competitor. You want to win. So you're going to try to find any edge that you can find to try and win. So a lot of that other stuff takes care of itself if you find somebody that has that.
Jasmine, anything to add to that? Can then this competitive spirit, competitive drive be developed, or you, as Kara has stated, that you have it or you don't?
I think it's innate. And I just say that just because I remember when I first started playing basketball, I had no experience with it other than watching it. My older brother played, I watched people play. But when I got on the court, I still wanted to be the best person that day. Hadn't been taught anything technical, how to dribble, how to shoot, like nothing technical. But I knew that when I got on that floor, whatever they challenged me to do, I wanted to beat whoever it was. And everyone was older than me, but I felt that in me, and I've always felt that in me. So I feel like that's innate. Now, how I developed over time with my skill set was work ethic. So I think, learning to work hard and wanting to get better, I think that can be developed over time. But that competitiveness, I think, is innate.
No, and I'm glad we had this conversation, because I think there was a social media post maybe a week, 10 days ago, and it was Kara talking to the team, and it was on this notion: did you, were you a competitor today? Did you compete when you, whatever it is that you were doing? And I think, it is inspirational to see it in that video and then to hear it again tonight. I feel like I need to jump out of my seat and go compete at something. I don't know what it is at this moment, but I feel like there's something I should be competing for. So no, really, really appreciate that dialogue. I want to turn to sort of the overseas experience in general. I think both of you have spent some portion of your playing career playing overseas. Can you give, and Jasmine, since you're living it, can you give us a little bit of an insight as to what is it like to be overseas playing? Obviously, you just finished a condensed season in the WNBA, where you were effectively playing, I believe, every other day or almost every other day. And then you jet set to Turkey, and now you are starting up another season. So what's that like? How do you recover? You rest? Can you just share with us your experience?
The rest time is minimal. You get 10 days, the contracts say whatever, anywhere from 7 to 10 days in between the WNBA season and the overseas season. That's if you play a full season. Some people go late. And it's a little slower paced as far as games. Like I said, you could be on a team where you play once a week, or you can be on a team where you're in 2 leagues, which is your domestic league and also a Euro Cup or a Euro League. And that'll really pick up the pace a lot, because you'll travel more. Obviously with COVID this year, things are up in the air for how that's going to go. But you're not playing that every other day like we did this summer. You're not even playing 3 games in a week like we would in a WNBA season. But yeah, there's no rest. You just jump right in. It could be a different team, a different country every year. They set you up with an apartment. You have your housing. You just jump in, practice. There's a few import players, 2 Americans. It can be a certain amount of Europeans, and you just go to work. You do what you know how to do. You get a little bit more freedom over here, I would say, as far as there's a lot of people that, play in specific roles in the WNBA as part of an organization and, putting those pieces together. But then when you come to your team overseas, every import is expected to be a go-to player. So it's a little bit different of a environment over here, but I enjoy it.
I actually never played overseas. I mean, I played with the national team. I played in other countries, but I never went over there. So I was living the glamorous television life off season. So it's not that glamorous. It was a joke.
And so Jasmine, how long is your time in Turkey or overseas?
About 7 months. I think that is October to the end of April.
So October to the end of April, and in a normal environment, the WNBA training camp would start, mid-May or earlier?
April. The seasons overlap both ways. If you make it to the finals, last game of the finals, or even just the finals in general, you miss the beginning of the season in Europe. And then if you play in the finals in overseas, you miss training camp for the WNBA.
So let's talk about that a little bit, right? Because obviously male basketball players don't necessarily have to go overseas to continue their season. And we've also seen, I should say, some notable WNBA players decide to sit out a season to rest or to rejuvenate, or take on other causes. how do you go from such a quick transition, obviously from season after season after season, and mentally and physically, how do you keep yourself sharp?
I mean, it's tough when you're young, just because of that, the whole culture shock of it all, leaving home for so long, coming into environments that you're not comfortable with at all, and just having to adjust both to the game, to the, management of different teams, and to, just the whole business of it over here. It is very different than the WNBA. It's hard as you're young, but then you just get used to it. It sucks to say that, because it is not ideal for our bodies to be playing year round, but you do get used to, learning how to take care of your body when you need rest. You don't let any little nagging aches and pains go. Every little pain is a big deal, and you try to take care of it right away, because you don't want it to turn into something major. You start changing the way you eat. You start, changing how you're lifting, and just doing anything that you can to kind of always feel good when you step onto the floor. And I don't know, it's just credit to our new CBA. So I don't know if everyone has paid attention, but a huge part of that is that it is we don't have to play year round now. It's not for everyone. Of course, everyone's not going to be able to make that bet maximum salary of that $215 and get all of the, the marketing money to supplement all of that and be the highest paid. But when you look at the, I guess, average of the WNBA player's income who plays in the summer and overseas, you're able to get a more respectable income. I guess it's still not what ideally we want it to be, but you don't have to play year round if you don't want to. And with the internship opportunities or off-season job opportunities that's also put into that CBA, you can make income outside of basketball now. So it's just we took a huge step in a good direction. But for those who enjoy playing overseas, who really still make a significantly larger salary over here, it's gonna hurt them a little bit. So, we'll see it play out a little better in the next, I'd say, like 4 to 5 years. But yeah, that's where we are.
And Kara, we don't let you off the hook that easily. So when you were living this glamorous television life as a player, how did you stay sharp? When you're not necessarily playing overseas like some of the competition would be.
Yeah, I just made sure that I was disciplined with what I was doing. And so when I woke up first thing in the morning, I went in and got my workout. The travel schedule can be challenging when you're covering games. And a lot of college programs, both women and men, allowed me to use their facilities. So if I was, for example, calling a game at Duke, I would get in the K Center and get a workout before while the students were in class. If other schools, I've probably worked out in every practice facility in the country, or close to every practice facility in the country. And so those programs and those coaches were gracious enough to allow me to do so. So I'd wake up early in the morning, make sure that I took care of what I needed to do with my body for 3-4 hours, and then the rest of the day spent work and preparing for the games. I can remember being at Final Fours and trying to get my workout in before heading over to shoot-arounds or whatever it is. But that's a commitment you have to have. It's not even though we only play in the summer, you can't just wake up in April and say, okay, now I'm ready to play. Like it is a lifestyle. It is year-round. It is every single day that you have to commit to it if you want to be successful and play at a really high level. And so that's just what I did. And I only knew one way because I started in television the year after or my first year out of school. So I was always doing it, and I just knew that I needed to get my workouts in, and that's what I would do.
And to this point, and Jasmine will ask you this question as well, but it's come in a couple of times, and since Kara's talking about working out, what was your favorite, like when you're doing these workouts, what's like your go-to drill to make sure that you're getting your reps, you're getting sort of the speed of the game, or trying to simulate the speed of the game as best as you could?
You asking Jasmine?
Well, I'll start with Kara,
Oh,
and then Jasmine,
okay.
I'll come to you on your sort of favorite workout or drill.
I mean, a lot of these times I was by myself because I was on the road. So I just had from a basketball standpoint, I had a 1 hour routine that I used to do, or it's around 1 hour, but it's timed. And so I'm trying to, make a certain amount of shots and in a certain amount of time. And that being by myself, that was a lot of cardio involved as well. So for me, especially as I got later into my career, my workouts got shorter, but the intensity was really high. And that's what I tried to make sure that I was doing every day, was working at that high level of intensity. And then, obviously lifting and a lot of stretching, a lot of recovery. And that obviously increases as you get older as well.
And Jasmine, when you're working out, is there a go-to drill or certain workout that motivates you or helps you stay sharp?
For the most part, since I'm always in season, most of my workouts are geared toward games. So looking at film and seeing, where I'm not scoring the ball as well, or, where I am doing well and what I need to keep doing. But Beat the Pro is, as I've worked on, shooting from behind the three over my career, Beat the Pro has become like one of my favorite drills to do to end the workout when I'm already tired. And basically, you shoot the shot. If you make it, you get the points. If you miss it, you give more points than what it's worth. So, it's a tough drill, but it's fun.
Nice. And want to, excuse me, transition and think about sort of the game and Jasmine, you alluded to getting getting to the game to a point where you can have the opportunity to have the earning potential that you would like, and maybe not have to play year round. There seems sometimes to be this misnomer to say that women's basketball is better received, say in Europe or outside of America, than people here. In your opinion, is that true? Do you feel more appreciated abroad than at home?
That is not true. I feel more appreciated at home, just because basketball, it's our sport. It's what we take pride in, being basketball and coming from America and us being at the highest level of it. Even when you look at our, USA basketball, men's and women's, basketball is our thing. So I feel like I don't think that, it gets more support overseas. I think people don't really understand the business of it overseas. So a lot of the money that comes in for these huge salaries are through sponsorship. So if the import players are getting paid the maximum amount of the money, that means that everyone else on the team is getting paid pennies, so they're really only paying 5 players per team. So the allotment of those resources is a lot different. Whereas in the WNBA, it's a respectable actual, career job. Everyone's on a pay scale. You're in it's just a different business. So I think, what they say for us in the W is that the more that we get people to truly support us, that's watch us on TV and actually buy tickets to, get butts in seats for games, the more we can see our revenue go up. So, that's a direct correlation to that support in America. And I feel like now that the numbers have been shared a lot more, you're seeing, especially if you paid attention this summer to viewership with our whole season, and especially with the playoffs, it's going up. People are absolutely paying attention to the WNBA and really learning to appreciate the game. It's a fantastic product, and the more exposure we get, the more people can actually, see and appreciate it.
And Kara, you've had the opportunity to, as you alluded to, travel the globe with USA Basketball and with just basketball in general. What do you think needs to continue to develop or be done so we can continue to grow the game here, grow sponsorship, viewership, and all the things that we'd like to see happen?
Well, I think the exposure is the number one thing that women's basketball needs to continue to pursue. because the more people are exposed to the game, and exposure, I'm not just talking about on television, just in general within communities, the more people fall in love with watching it, fall in love with our players, fall in love with the people that make up this great game in women's basketball. And so the community that surrounds the universities across the country, or the community that surrounds the WNBA teams, that's where I think women's basketball can really thrive. I look at the Durham community and how incredible of a place that it is, how diverse it is, how educated it is, how many people that love sports that there are, not just in our university community, but also in the city of Durham. To me, that's a perfect fit for what our program is, what our program will be, and what type of people that should be at our games. The community should be at our games, supporting our team and supporting our young women in our program. And so that part excites me. And so I just think being focused, targeted effort, and gaining exposure. For me, my focus and my effort is towards the Duke program, and trying to make sure that our players are getting the type of support and getting the type of resources and getting the type of exposure that they should be. And that's a two-way street, because if you want to have the type of exposure, you want to have the type of support, you also need to put something out on the floor that people can connect with, that people want to be behind, that people want to cheer for. And so that's what we want to be here at Duke, is a program that people can really get behind.
For those folks in the triangle or near the triangle, basically Kara saying buy tickets. Yeah. Buy tickets, come watch our team play, come watch and come support our team, buy tickets. I'll summarize that for you. No, appreciate that. And then one of the big questions, a lot of questions that we're getting, talk about the intensity of both of you, and having watched you play on television, coach, and just how you prepare. How do you instill that intensity into the team that you're building now, Kara and Jasmine? If you can talk about sort of, what your coaches have done, or what you personally do to make sure you keep that intensity and you keep that focus to have that drive. And I don't want to get back to that competitive spirit that we spoke about earlier, but that intensity, how do you just keep that strong and sort of on full at all times? Jasmine?
For me, I would just say, without going back to that competitiveness, I feel like when I think about, what I want to, kind of leave as my legacy or leave with the game, it's that I was able to kind of, inspire my teammates to have a certain level of intensity. And I think for me, it helps me perform. When I feel like I don't want to waste my time. When I'm on the court for any given reason, whether that's practice, a shoot around, or, just anything, I feel like I'm locked in. I want to get something out of it. So, having that level of intensity when I finish what I'm doing, I feel good about it. I feel like I grew. I feel like I got better in some way. And being able to, instill that into, younger players, I'm not getting any younger now. This is just my 10th season in the league. That's just something that I want to be able to do. How can I affect them? How can I, help their development and, bring them around sooner? But, you want rookies and young players to grow up fast, especially in such a fast-paced league like the W. So for me, that's what it's been about.
And Kara, instilling that intensity into the 2020-2021 Duke women's basketball team, what are you doing?
I'm intense. I think that probably helps a little bit with our players. I think teaching is really important. How you teach and how you correct. I think demanding focus is really important. It's hard to have great intensity without great focus. And so making sure that our players are focused when they come in. And I think just holding them accountable when the intensity isn't there. So like accountability is an important part of, successful team and successful leadership. If the intensity is lacking, if something is lacking, it needs to be said. Otherwise, it's going to stay at the level that it is. And so I think that even though that sounds very simple to do, all of us have been in situations where it's not always easy to call someone out on what needs to be done. And it's not always comfortable, not for the person that's doing it, and definitely not for the person that's receiving it. But if that's what you if that's what you want your team to be about, if that's what you need to demand, then you have to be able to be sensitive enough to understand when the intensity is not where it needs to be, which means that you're focused, which means that you don't have distractions, which means that you're locked into watching and observing and making sure, and you're sensitive to the differences of your players individually and as a collective group. And then you're holding them accountable when they don't bring what's necessary to the practice each day.
And speaking of that intensity, Jasmine, I want to ask you sort of how do you continuously bring that intensity on the defensive end of the court? Because I think one of the things that you are known for in the league is being a tough on the ball and in the passing lane defender. Like, what motivates you? Because oftentimes you see SportsCenter or highlights and someone hitting a miraculous shot or doing something offensively. How do you keep that same intensity on the defensive end of the court?
I mean, I've just always been someone that loved defense. And, you say that and it sounds like kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, like no one loves defense. Well, in order to play offense, you gotta get the ball back. And I think that's always been my kind of what drives me to play defense, is to give my team extra possessions. And when I know that that's part of my role for my team, is that's what they rely on me for, to set that tone for our team defensively, it makes you want to do it, the best you can every game. So they're counting on me for that. And I want to bring that, I want to bring it every night. And that's kind of how I keep it. It sets the tone for everyone else.
And Kara, there are a lot of questions coming in about sort of your defensive philosophies for our team this upcoming season. Without giving away state secrets, can you talk about some of the defensive principles that you want to bring? Anything we can be on the lookout for?
Yeah, I don't have any state secrets. I mean, I don't know. I don't know yet what we're gonna play or how we're going to do it. What I mean by that is, I think we're still in the process of kind of evaluating. Like when you take over a team, we spent the preseason, we're obviously evaluating individual player skills, what they can, what they can't do, where they're strong, where they're weak. And now as a group, as we've been able to put it on together, we haven't been able to put 5 players on the court together until yesterday. So, not being coy, just don't really have an answer as far as what's going to be the best fit for us. But I anticipate us playing both man and zone, but couldn't give you a percentage at this point. We'll see what works best. But we're just really focusing on teaching the foundational pieces of our defense, foundational pieces of our offense, and then we'll throw a lot. They'll throw a lot at our players and see where we can accentuate their strengths the best and what fits for us as a group. But we're fortunate we've got some time before the first game. In a typical year, that the first game would be a little bit earlier in the calendar for us as a first-year staff, and trying to put in a new system, because it's a new system, it's new terminology for our players from what they're used to. Not that there's a ton positive about the pandemic, but getting a couple extra weeks of preseason for first-year staff, I think has allowed us to hopefully have enough time to be able to see what works best for our group.
And you mentioned evaluation and evaluating the players. You spend a lot of time in the glamorous life of television, and curious how you think watching so many games and observing so many practices has translated into you evaluating the current players on the team as you think about recruiting and building a team around your, Kara's philosophy, the Kara era. How did those moments sort of off the court and watching, how they're influencing how you think about player development and then recruiting?
I definitely think being in television influenced me in a significant way as a coach. Having the opportunity to go around the country to interact with top programs, top coaches, observe how they run their programs, observe the order of their practices, get a chance to watch shoot-arounds, be in shoot-arounds at the Final Four morning of a national championship game. You get to see how everybody does things, and you get to see that there are many paths to success at the collegiate level. Not everybody does things the same way. And just observing, taking notes, I think just gave me a good cross-section of different ways to have success. And then as you put it all together, it has to be authentic to you and your style and how you do things. But there's definitely things I picked up from different programs around the country that makes sense for what we're doing here at Duke.
And Jasmine, you alluded to earlier watching film and trying to evaluate your own game and your own play. As you think about where you are, I think you said you just finished your 10th year in the WNBA, or is that correct? As you think about as a first year, as a rookie in the WNBA and as a 10th year player, how the 10 year vet evaluate year one, Jasmine?
I mean, I think, a lot of my game is speed. And, I still get in trouble sometimes with that playing too fast. But for the most part, I feel like, the game has slowed down for me a lot. I understand it a lot better. And I'm able to kind of manipulate it a little bit, get what I want. I know what we're looking for as a team. I know what our strengths are. And, I'm defensively, the philosophies of every team or, just of how we like to play, I can just put it all together. And it's almost like I'm playing it out in my mind before I'm doing it, with my body. And that comes from watching so much film. That's scout film of teams before I play them. That's watching individual players throughout the league. And then that's rewatching every single game. And I think throughout my 10 years, that's really helped me develop as a player. Besides actual skill set things, like I said, being able to shoot the three better was a challenge for me throughout my whole career, is being more consistent there. And, that was just getting reps, working on it, getting confidence. But when it comes to actually playing and understanding the game, that came from video.
And Kara, as you think about our, recruiting, and it's still on this topic of evaluating, what are you looking for? How are you evaluating, say, the high school kids that you guys are starting to have the opportunity to contact with and to watch film on? What are you looking for?
Well, one thing I'm looking for is competitors.
Yes.
All right, that's the first thing. I think for our group, obviously the competitive piece, the academic piece is important at Duke. And so that's not necessarily something you see on film, but it is an important part of the group of players that we recruit. There has to be a seriousness and a professional approach in the classroom. The versatility is something I value very much in players, because I think versatility, the true way to unlock versatility is to play with other versatile players. So if you're a versatile player and you're playing on a team and you're playing with 4 other players that aren't versatile, it's really hard to show everything that you can do because they're not versatile. So I think that the more versatility that you have on your team, the more the versatile players can unlock everything in their game. And so that's something that I think is really important. And versatility so often is associated with the offensive end of the floor. But defensive versatility is becoming more and more important. The ability to guard different players with different strengths is really, really valuable because it allows you to be flexible, to do different things defensively if someone has that defensive versatility. So I would probably say those two things off the top.
And so, Jasmine, as you hear, Kara talk about being versatile, do you think kind of coming out of high school and listening to what Kara just said, she's looking for as a player, would you have been? I know you're a competitor, so we checked that box.
18 right now.
I think so, especially because when I was younger, I was kind of a combo guard. I wasn't actually a point guard. The ball was always in my hands because I was a primary scorer, so I did run into that little, iffy part of like, am I 1, am I a 2, am I a scorer, am I a facilitator, what am I, so definitely.
Cool. So as we get to the end, there's a few rapid fire questions that I want to pose to both of you. Aside from Coach Summit for you, Kara, and you've spoken about having the opportunity to see some of the other programs, were there any other coaches that have been influential to you as to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Brad Stevens. I obviously worked with him this past year in Boston, and we talk every week. He's somebody that is a great mentor for me and has a unique perspective because he's been a college coach before. So he understands the challenges of running a program and being a first-time head coach. So he's helped me a lot. We actually just spoke last night, and just being able to bounce things off of someone in real time is very valuable. And certainly someone that's had a great deal of success and thinks about things creatively. So I would say definitely Brad is somebody that has influenced me and is continuing to influence me with our relationship. And, I'm thankful for that. I didn't see myself leaving Boston, to be honest with you. I loved Boston. It was a great place. It was going to take something really special to leave the Celtics, and that is this, right? Duke is special, and I'm really, really fortunate to be here and excited every day that I'm here, and I just can't wait. I can't wait for the games to start. I can't wait for the pandemic to be over so that I can really get a chance to have our alums come back and be a part of our program, to have our fans, to be around our team and within the community. I'm chomping at the bit a little bit, but I just I can't wait to experience all that the Duke community has to offer.
And Jasmine, for those of us that want to watch you play overseas, is there a link or a website or something that we can go to make sure we don't miss your action?
Yeah, I play for Fenerbahce, which is a pretty popular club here in Turkey. So they'll stream the games on their YouTube channel when they're in the Turkish league, and then when EuroLeague starts, the EuroLeague app, you can also find those games on EuroLeague as well.
Right. And a question for both of you is: this has been such a success tonight. People want to know, when can we do this again?
Not at 2:30 in the morning, please.
Well, we'll have to figure out the schedules, but hopefully we can do it when Jasmine and I are in the same place sometime soon. So
that would be great.
Yeah. And the last question, and again for both of you before I wrap this up, your fondest basketball memory, Jasmine?
Mine would have to be WNBA All-Star in Seattle in 2017. That was pretty special.
Probably the Olympics, just because it's a goal I set when I was really young, to represent Team USA and to be able to do that and win a gold medal. I would say that's probably my fondest.
Great. Well, I want to say thank you to both of you. Obviously, Kara, taking time out of your day, and as season starts, and Jasmine, I don't know, keeping you from going to bed, keeping you from going out, whichever one it is. But but no, seriously, thank you both for such a wonderful session. And you guys talk about Duke being special. Duke is special because of people like you, and I want to say thank you from all of the organizations that are part of pulling this program off. But just truly great time tonight. Really enjoyed the conversation. And again, everyone, buy season tickets. If you have them already, buy some more. And when we can, let's come back to Cameron. Let's support Kara. And when we can, let's support Jasmine, however we may be fortunate to do so. And at this point, I'll turn the program back over to Kaylene.
Thank you, Mychal, and thank you, Kara and Jasmine. This has been really amazing, and it's an incredible evening, and I'm so happy that y'all were able to join. Thank you to everybody that tuned in, and please look at our website to check out for other Duke alumni events that are happening both in the Triangle and globally. With that, everybody have a lovely evening.